All right. On to the show, as we say.
Yeah, so the show had, this particular show was actually larger than the, as far as attendees, than the previous one that was held in Houston in 2013. Again, there was a lot of tech sessions. It was pretty good on various informations, even including engineering, procurement, and how to work with Rockwell on some of the solutions. There was 19 hands-on labs. One of the labs had to deal with an innovative product that we're going to be discussing in a little bit. I also had 140 plus exhibitors too. So Rockwell in this particular one, the previous one they had 14 areas that they were concentrating on. This one they decided to take it down to 10. So they really wanted to emphasize some of those areas. One was the connected enterprise. Another was the integrated architecture. A real nice one was the innovations. That has some neat stuff that's coming out. We'll talk to that. And this is kind of the layout of the floor, showing those areas. So integrated architecture, connected enterprise, that was the big one right in the middle. That had actually a new Factory Talk product that Wayne's going to be discussing, but innovations was pretty cool because it had some Compass partners too on some leading technology areas. So this was the actual, some of the pictures of the 2017 Automation Fair, and which it's one of the pictures is really nice, showing the Logix and operator interface from the components booth. Had a couple of new items there. There are going to be anticipated some more ones coming out within 2018. Keeping in mind that a lot of this, a lot of these things that are being innovative is also because of changes in RoHS. RoHS is going to be implemented within 18, so Rockwell had to push forward on some of their products. So one of the areas that we're going to discuss is a picture on the left-hand side, which is showing the person using virtual reality goggles. So actually how that operates. So there was, in effect, I think there was 13,000 attendees. But these are just some of the various ways that they showed their themselves on the social media.
That was taken from Automation Fair Twitter. So let's go into the best in show, some of the products, and we'll start off with the best overall theme. So last year we awarded the best overall theme, and it was last year's show was all about the smart machine, right? The more intelligent machine. So kind of that next step in the process is Factory Talk Analytics piece. So overall, that was the theme of the show, I would say. So just a quick, so it's kind of hard here for us to talk about analytics because there's still a lot of details that aren't quite there yet. If you're looking around any of the Rockwell websites, you might see some information about this Project CO, they call it. That's basically like an analytics dashboard that is coming. That'll be out in April timeframe. So you see a lot of stuff around the analytics platform, CO, and then we talked about the chatbot a minute ago. So the Shelby box, which is that kind of looks like a computer, like a blind node computer sitting there. That's actually a diagnostic box that can go on your plant floor. It'll connect to the internet, or to the plant network, I should say, not the internet, but plant network. And it'll kind of sniff out all the devices out there in your network. It'll start talking to those devices, getting diagnostic data from those devices, and there's a chatbot interface into it, so you can actually hook up to it and just kind of chat with Shelby, they call it, and you can say, hey Shelby, how's my line looking today? And it'll say, hey, you've got an anomaly perhaps on this pump or something. So that might sound like science fiction or HAL 9000 and that type of stuff, but it's here today, and it's just going to get better and better over time. So kind of the big picture on analytics, and again, this is a little hard to kind of really point to actual products and things at this point in time, but just kind of know this is kind of where it's going. So I have two slides that are very identical to each other, but I think this helps visualize it a bit. Typically, when you're looking at data, you're talking about these are the type of interactions, right? Descriptive, like what happened, diagnostic, why did it happen, predictive, what will happen, and then prescriptive is what should I do, right? So I think traditionally, we've always, done fairly well here, right? We kind of know the descriptive and the diagnostic, right? Because a lot of our products have diagnostics built into them. We can kind of know when something happened. That's usually after the fact, right? We know that the fault occurred. We can kind of go back and look at why that fault occurred. So the next big trend is kind of the bottom two, right? That's partly what Project CO will bring in, and that's the predictive and the prescriptive, right? So not just saying, hey, we had a problem, but maybe be able to predict that you're about to have a problem, and then more importantly, well, what should you do about that? And this slide here, luckily we had just found this here this morning, really helps summarize, I think, a lot of where this is going to go very soon for the industry. And that is, again, you've got your kind of your 4 columns here, right? Your descriptive, your diagnostic, your predictive, and descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and then the prescriptive. And then you can look at it basically in these layers, right? By a device, by a system, and then by the enterprise, right? So we can look at, just an individual device itself, or we're going to get an overall line within the plant, or you can kind of take it to the full enterprise approach, right? Like, my plant, why is that plant not performing properly? Why is that line down? Can we predict that the line will go down? And can we predict that that drive is about to fail? And the real benefit of all this, and where this is, the reason why this is, is obviously the minimizing downtime, right, for the customer. Downtime is loss of money. So the more, the intelligence is there in a lot of cases, right? Yes, there's going to be customers that aren't quite up to the modern controllers yet, but a lot of information is already sitting there, right? So you're kind of taking that data now and really being able to use it to maybe predict some things and minimize downtime, or at least put the downtime on your terms, right, and not on the equipment's terms. So that's kind of where this is really moving to.
Chuck, you don't mind if I interject here? So last year on the device level was the FactoryTalk Analytics for devices, which was the Shelby. So that was kind of like phase 1. So that was last year. This year they've talked about CO, and they've also talked about FactoryTalk Analytics for machines. So that's where they're the next step.
There's a lot of FactoryTalk Analytics, kind of products. Not a lot of information out there about them yet. So definitely, as the year moves on, you will definitely hear more and more about that from us and from Rockwell, of course, around that messaging. And with that, I'll turn over to Bill for a few.
So the best in innovation was the access management system. If you would, hit the.
Yeah, you can control it.
Okay. So this is pretty neat. It may be simple, but it's pretty neat, I think. It has to do with integration between applications and Rockwell Automation. Rockwell Automation has always put out a lot of information. It's just being able to find it adequately and quickly. And so what Rockwell has done is they've heard that message. So what they're doing is they're trying to improve the user experience with the web application. So like, for instance, if you try to go to Knowledge Base or Support Center or to the software subscription portal, those are some of the areas where, some of us, we had still a spreadsheet where we're trying to keep our passwords and so forth together. This is makes it so that when you sign on once, and if you have your, using your computer, because that's one of the things that always aggravated me, was I had to keep signing on every 8 hours or something like that. So they're looking at it, but it seems like maybe a simple thing, but it's a huge thing because they're trying to update all the technology, centralize all the data, which is a lot of it, and standardize their branding. So standardize where you have one just interface that's recognizable to get on. So there's more information that can be found on the site. This actually, they were showing this, but within the last 2 weeks, this has actually been implemented with the phase 1, basically the knowledge base and support center. So I'm going to go into the best in the IC products. One of the really cool parts of the products is it's kind of simple. My wife calls it the Legos, but I just told her I won't use Crackle with it. But But the this new one is the 1492P, which is a push-in terminal block, and this was kind of the central focus of the components section. They actually had 3 labs put together, basically, where you can do hands-on. What's really cool about this is, if you notice right in the middle, there's kind of an orange with a slot or indentation. That if you actually push it down below it, it will open up the spring, basically, on the clamp. So it's it pretty much slashes wiring times for either solid wire or ferruled wires in half. So it cuts 52%. It also is great for where you're trying to eliminate vibration problems. It improves that. But what they've also done is they have 3 different product lines within it. So they have the universal, the power distribution, and the sensor style. I actually have some samples here in person, but I'll discuss or talk about, in particular, the one that I really like is the power distribution. So the power distribution is where you can have either a positive or negative or neutral and power, and you can have multiple on one terminal block. So like a 6mm wide terminal block, you can have up to 6. So I'm going to pass it around. You have up to 6 that you can connect in. So instead of having to put terminal blocks in a linear fashion and then put a jumper down the middle to carry your hot or your neutral, this is where you connect it up once onto one terminal block. There's a top and a bottom, and then you connect in your additional ones. So that's going to save a lot on space, time, and money. And that's the way that the industry is going. It's going with, I know a lot of our industry around here like screw-in, but the way that it's going forward is going to be with this new style. So the push-in really does eliminate a lot of the past problems with what they used to call the spring clamp. The next one is the large frame IEC and the NEMA contactors, so both the 100 and the 300. What's really cool about this is that you have smaller size and footprint up to, most of them are 30%, both on the height and the width and the depth, less space that it requires. Plus you have additional further more solutions. So NEMA ratings up to the size 8. You actually have your interface wiring with your PLC, 10 milliamps at 24 volts DC. So that means that you can just, instead of having to have a relays, you go straight to it. Your SCCR coordinations with your 140G circuit breakers and the direct connect kits. So that means that you have less panel space. So that's a good thing. I thought that was pretty cool. Another one is the 194U rotary disconnect switch. This again, it makes for one of the smallest footprints on the market as far as main disconnects, according to UL98, following the UL98, and then at motor disconnect switches following the UL508. So this is pretty cool, because then it means that you can mount these disconnect switches not just on a back plane, but you can mount it to the door or even to the side. 42AF right site, this kind of, we don't see a lot of this in our area, but I wanted to bring it out because it's pretty cool as far as where the technology is going. So it has embedded IO link, and this one 1.1 communication protocol, and it has the diagnostic features, but this one is pretty interesting too, that you have firmware upgrade to it. So that's one of the top things on this one. So it kind of shows where the technology is going. And then this didn't change. The 48CR code reader, that's the smallest in the industry, which is pretty cool. I thought it was. Has the highest high-end performance in a compact solution. So those were the IC areas.
All right. Thank you, Bill. I'll Ooh, a little static electricity there. All right, so we'll switch gears into automation. So kind of the next couple of sections will be automation, and then operator interface, and then software. Just kind of tell you where we're heading here for the rest of the session. So for best automation, there was a couple things, or three things that kind of call out. So first is the 1756 compute module. Which, oh, there we go. Kind of for those of you guys who've attended our sessions in the past, we had an edge computing topic. I think, I don't know, it might have been back in April timeframe or so, several months ago, of course. And we talked about edge computing or computing at the edge, and we were really kind of highlighting the new Compact Logic's 5480 product. That product kind of had some delays to it, so it never actually got released as we had anticipated when we did that session. So it's kind of it'll kind of be in 2018. But coming out next week is the 1756 compute module. So this is actually an in-chassis Windows 10 embedded computer, for ControlLogix in-chassis computer. And I think we have better pictures of it here. So again, Windows 10 IoT Enterprise, 64-bit. There will be a Linux 32-bit option available too. I don't know if it'll be out at the first release, but Windows 10 will definitely be out initially. 32 gig of storage and 4 gigabyte of RAM on board. Got a display port, so you can actually hook a monitor right up into it. Got USB ports. You can actually hook a keyboard or a mouse into it, or a little wireless keyboard dongle. And there's you see your graphic resolutions right there too. So what can you actually do with this thing? I mean, it's a Windows computer, so you can actually run some Windows applications on it. It could either just be a standalone computer sitting there in the chassis, or it'll have the ability to interface directly with the ControlLogix processor via the backplane, per that top bullet up there. So again, you can do data transfer, read-write from the compute module to the ControlLogix, or you can do some data transfer over a network, right? So you have a lot of flexibility in what you can do with this guy. So this is pretty exciting and pretty nice. And this one is on track to release on time. So again, that's due out next week. So that'll be pretty interesting. Next, parallel redundancy protocol module. We actually did a pretty nice piece on this in October users group, but I put it back in here again because to me it was one of the coolest demos I saw on the plant floor or on the showroom floor at the automation fair. And for those of you guys who weren't with us at our last session in October, here's a refresher for it or an introduction to it. And that is the EN2TP module. This product is actually out. This is out, and it's a parallel redundancy protocol, so PRP. And so we see a lot of specs nowadays where they want redundant media, right? Redundant Ethernet media, and one of the things where the Ethernet kind of Ethernet IP or some of our Ethernet modules kind of falls down as you don't necessarily have the two Ethernet ports. You can't do dual LANs to some of your things. So this PRP module will actually allow us to do that. So better than read bullets, let's just kind of show you how this works. So this is kind of traditional, right? You got one link through a switch, maybe you go into another switch, and then you kind of star out to several chassis from there. With the PRP module, I now have basically a LAN A and a LAN B. So one Ethernet card has two ports. So what basically happens here is that when the packet or whatever, when it's sent out off the card, it'll go in both directions, and it'll go on LAN B route, it'll go LAN A route and LAN B route, and whichever one gets there first is the one that wins. So if the LAN A route gets there first, then when the LAN B route packet gets there, it just says, hey, got you already, discard. So you basically have those parallel routes to get to the same place. So you'll see some terminology here. DAN, that's a doubly attached node. That's they kind of call that as a DAN. So certain switches, and it doesn't really matter what switch, right? It's not necessarily a PRP switch. It's just that it's any switch can work here. They show 5700s, but it's just basically giving it, parallel routes to the same place. Then there's a term called a red box, which is a term that's used here, not necessarily the DVD kiosk, but a 5400 switch already has the red box capability built into it. And what that means is that I can actually bring the two links to this one red box node, and now I can attach these devices that maybe don't have the PRP capability into this one switch, and now have the parallel routes back into that PRP network. And they consider that a virtual DAN, or virtually attached. And then just because it's all parallel redundancy, you can still bring in single nodes along here. The only catch here is that, and these are SAN, singly attached nodes, is that, okay, like this panel view sitting here in the middle of the slide is connected to the LAN A. Well, it's only accessible on the LAN A network. It won't be accessible on the LAN B network. So that's the only catch with those guys. But you can bring in as many devices like that as you need to. So it's pretty nice capability. Something that, again, I could see a lot of use for this kind of in what we do. So currently, the PRP module is the ControlLogix only. There will be a Flexi PRP module coming out, which actually leads us into our next best in show, and that is the new Flex 5000 IO family. So this will be, I think, out in January, I believe. It's coming out very soon, first of the year. And that's basically a refresh on the Flex, and they're going to call it the Flex 5000. And basically, you're going to have an enhanced backplane speed, enhanced performance, and you're going to have a gigabit Ethernet on board on the Ethernet IP adapter, and it will support PRP. There will be a PRP version of it that will come out at a later point in the year. And what's really kind of neat here is fiber. So you'll actually have SFP capability on it too. So there'll be a copper AENT module. There'll be a fiber AENT module, and then there'll be a PRP AENT module, as far as what I understand. So FlexIO, been around a long time, so this is kind of that next generation, bringing it into that high performance and high-speed applications. Operator interface. So the PanelView 5000 family. This has been out for a couple years, but it's really got to the point now where we need to kind of start talking about it and showing it to customers. And that is again, the PanelView 5000 family. So again, you got the PanelView 6, you got the PanelView Plus 6, you got the PanelView Plus 7. Those guys are still around. Those are Machine Edition, FactoryTalk View Machine Edition development. The PanelView 5000 family uses Studio 5000. So if you have Studio 5000 version 27 on up, View Designer is built in, standard. You don't have to go buy anything separate. You don't have to add anything to it. View Designer is there. So the tool to develop the graphics for this is in Studio 5000. So as an integrator or a developer, you can have one software tool that you purchase that can now do all your logics and do your operator interface. The other advantage to this product is that it's very tightly integrated into the Logix family. So, again, tight integration in ControlLogix. So if you're ControlLogix application and you're looking for a panel view, then these two guys are going to mate up very, very nicely. So what was kind of new is the fact that they've come out with a lower end, shall we say, 5310 addition to the family. So this is coming out here this month. So this is kind of targeted for kind of smaller applications. kind of that lower cost, kind of takes away some of the bells and whistles that you would have in the larger panel. Let me get to yeah, so 5310, 6, 7, 9, and a 12-inch. You will have the 5500 is already out. Let me get to where I'm trying to get to here. 5510 is a new version, so that 5500 panel is going to get replaced by the 5510. It's kind of a rebranding of it, and it's going to have some enhancements brought into it. That's coming out towards the second half of 2018. So here's what we're trying to get to, a comparison chart, right? So the main differences is if the low-end 5310 will be a touch-only panel, whereas the 5500 and 5510 will have keypad options available to it. You have some limitations on the only one USB on the 5310 and 2 on the others. A little bit of a temperature variation, right? 50 degrees C on the 5310 and 55C if it's under 19-inch. And no ATEX in the 5310, whereas you'll have an ATEX and Class 1 Div 2 in the larger panel, and then DC only. So that's some of the differentiations between these two. But again, something to start to consider, and part of the messaging for this year will be to kind of help introduce this product out to our customers. The main thing here is the application limits itself. So one controller, 50 screens, and yes, we know one controller, 100 screens. That's not, that's not the best, and that's going to get better. There's going to be a release, an enhancement to the 5500 family to allow for more than one controller, but that's kind of the limitation right now. So still there today. And one last one. Oh, it's terminal emulators are here, so you can actually emulate your terminal inside a studio before you launch your application. So that's a new development. And there are some faceplates are coming as well as part of this new release. All right, moving on. Best in software. So FactoryTalk, of all the software things, I like this one the most, and that's why we're going to kind of highlight this, and that's the FactoryTalk Network Manager software. So anyone's who've been, if you messed around a bit, you've probably seen the ferret scan, those kind of things where it kind of goes out and does a network. But this is actually a one that you would purchase. Okay, so it's not a free tool. This is one you're going to purchase from Rockwell, and it's going to be based on the number of managed switches that you have in your installation. And it's going to go out. It's going to build that topology for you. So it's going to go out. It's going to look at the network. It's going to build the topology of the network, and it's going to kind of build all the stuff that's underneath that managed switch. And now it'll sort of give you, visibility, of course. You'll have some troubleshooting capabilities built into that, as well as some configuration and deployment capabilities inside that tool. So again, giving you a nice insight into your network on your plant floor. So bear with me, I've got a bunch of slides on this. I'm going to kind of move quick just to kind of show some screenshots of it. So basically, it discovers the plant floor assets, and gives you that topology. It's SIP and Profinet protocols, so it's not just a Rockwell only tool. Here's kind of a picture of what that topology view might look like in this example. You could also break it down by inventory view, so you can kind of get a little chart, kind of show you what's there, and gives you the IP address and the name and description, perhaps. So you can even get down to the end device, right? So kind of what are the end devices that are underneath that switch? So got a PLC, I got a COM adapter, and you can, off on the other side of the chart there, you see it actually tells me it's a 1756-L61 or a ENBT, so I can actually get that information through there. You can see into the managed switch. So again, if it's a static switch, of course, you're going to get a lot of good information right out of the switch itself. So this is an 8000 example. So you can see all your ports, which ones are active, which ones aren't. Get some VLAN information and MAC information, etc. And you can do some grouping. Then in troubleshooting, you'll be able to see, real-time, kind of alarms and events inside those switches, and some historical retention of that, kind of like an audit trail, perhaps, of alarms. So you can go back, if something happened over midnight, you can hopefully get back in and see exactly what happened overnight, perhaps, to the network. You'll be able to do some filtering on that. And some more additional details into those alarms. Affected connected end devices, any alarm notes, that type of stuff. And you can configure your alarms, of course. And those are the audit details. And some assigning roles. And then moving into configuration and deployment. So again, you can now kind of create some templates, plug and play and configuration templates. So there you go. Upload existing configurations, PNP profile, and you can push those configurations to devices based on that template. So just help you deploy across a larger network quicker and easier. All right. Now we're almost coming towards the end here. Last one was a partner network. So a little bit of a spotlight a couple of our Encompass partners. And first one is the E1 Flexi 205. So this was kind of a product launch there on the show this year, the Flexi 205. So if you're familiar with E1, the Cozy, or even the Flexi product, if you've seen that before, the E1 is remote access. We actually have one on the wall back there in our demo room here in the Harahan branch where we're presenting from. So the Cozy is a remote access tool that allows you to basically, I can connect in, here, and say my skid is up in Alaska or whatever. I can actually remote into that, using the Cozy. I can, kind of remote into it over a private or VPN connection, and I can connect to it. And just like I'm sitting at the equipment, I can get in there. I can look at, open up Studio 5000. I can connect to that control objects. I can make a program change if I had to, all through the Cozy. Then there was a second product that E1 made, and that was the Flexi. The Flexi was more of a data tool. So it wasn't really a remote access. It was really more of getting data off those remote skids and into a cloud to where I can actually see that data remotely. So if I wanted just to look at that, skid that's in Alaska and just see what's happening there, is it running, is it not running? The Flexi would allow me to kind of get that data out, put it in the cloud, and then from the cloud I can, send it to all kinds of different people that, needed it. So what E1 has done is they have come up with what they call the Flexi 205, and that basically has combined those two products into one, which is kind of nice. So I think this next slide shows a little better. So so you have remote access, so I can connect into my equipment and actually look at the, connect to it just like Studio or Factory Talk, or it doesn't have to be Rockwell either. It could be Siemens, GE, whoever's brand equipment. You can connect to that equipment and just interface with it as if you're standing right in front of it. I could do data acquisition, I could do data logging, I could do alarms and email, SMS messaging. So the Flexi itself could send a text message out, right? Hey, when that condition got to a certain point, just send a text message out to whoever, key stakeholders, and I now know there's something going on at that remote skid. There's even a built-in HMI, so when I do connect into it, it's not just numbers. I can actually build a nice little graphical interface and actually see, that data, maybe a little, meter or bar chart or something simple like that. I can do some basic Java scripting, so not so much. The term programmable there might be confusing it's not like a PLC program type of thing. It's more of a scripting that you can put in here. So maybe there's some data that comes from various pieces of equipment. You can put some scripting in there to kind of contextualize that data a little bit better than just, again, a bunch of numbers. And then OPC UA. Also, it hasn't shown on this slide, but it's also MQTT, which is kind of one of these, kind of the one of these IoT or IIoT protocols that we kind of see a lot, kind of thrown up, kind of used a lot, kind of as a bit of a standard, shall we say, in the IoT world to get data up into the cloud. So it'll support that MQTT as well. So this is, again, just kind of showing more of an architectural view, again, of how you can have multiple remote sites. They all kind of come back into the cloud platform, and from there it can kind of be sent out in a few different ways to users. And I think that was then the Flexi. I'll give it back to Bill for this one.
All right. So this was in the innovations booth. This was pretty cool. When I first saw it, I was like, okay, it's virtual reality that they're using, so what application does it really have? Once I got into it and actually got to do the user experience, it was pretty cool. So basically, what it is it, so you take your program with, they're an Encompass partner with Rockwell Automation, so you have your program, and then using AMHS equipment blocks, you can actually put on this goggle, and you can walk around in a empty room or empty warehouse. If there's a site that's already up, it's really cool because you can walk the whole site, and you can actually see the equipment. And using these devices in the hand, you can actually act like an operator and turn off or turn on equipment, and then you will see the action or reaction of it. So, like for instance, if you're facing one way towards the equipment, but yet the actual operation of the equipment is behind you, then you turn around and you can see it. You can see the complete operation of the whole plant floor. And the reason why, if you notice up at the top, it's got the Queen's Award for Enterprise Innovation, is because they actually, at Heathrow Airport, they actually put in some baggage handling for, I think it's 2 new terminals, huge, and it all went to a cluster. It just started throwing bags everywhere. So they actually brought this Emulate 3D, and they came in, and by means of actually putting the system together, they can actually do on-site commissioning. They can actually see what the reaction was going to be. So they debugged the system, basically. So you can use this system, for FATs. You can actually use it to walk a whole new building and see exactly what your building is going to be, whether there's going to be interferences with other equipment or so forth. So it's got a whole lot of ways of using this application. Besides, it's cool. You can see some of the products down at the bottom that uses like the Microsoft HoloLens and the Samsung Gear VR, Google Cardboard. So it really puts it all together. And if you go to YouTube, you can actually see some of the videos on it. It's really, when I actually saw it, I was like, wow, this is not where you're trying to take virtual reality and make it work. This is where the virtual reality is really application, a good application. So some of the, go ahead.
No, so, and then I remember, I don't know what was the booth where they had the projection of the plant floor on the ground. Did you catch that one, Dean? Which one that was? I know there was kind of a similar vein. There was one where like the plant floor, like the whole plant layout was like projected down onto the ground, and you could just kind of step into it and it'll pull it up or something. So it was not that the setup would actually be something you would use, right? But it was just kind of cool, how they had developed that. But
so some of the things that we mentioned today are either out or going to be coming out. So, like for instance, I mentioned about the 1492P that's slated to come out in January. Some of the other items, like for instance, the code reader, that's going to be in March. So a lot of this stuff, we also know about some products that are going to be coming in the future, and they'll probably be at the Automation Fair 2018 up in Philadelphia. Some of them are probably going to be like the E100 relay, the E200. That was kind of shown a little bit at this past Automation Fair, but that's a little bit in the future. There's going to be a new stack light, 8555, that's going to be using some of the newer technology. So there's a lot of things that are going to be coming forward at the Automation Fair 2018 in Philadelphia. So keep that in mind. That's going to be, again, in the middle of November. I believe I already put that on my schedule. I think it's going to be, this one was 14th and 15th. I think this one in 2018 is 19th and
similar.
20th,
I think it's always week before
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. So yeah, Philadelphia. So if you didn't go to Houston where the weather was warm, and you're going to get stuck going to Philly where it's going to be probably not quite as pleasant, right? So we've actually, I was kind of worried we were going to go over, but we didn't.
Yeah,
Perhaps we didn't bring enough best of show products there, but that was a little taste of a lot of things coming up. Again, there was a lot more that they did show that we didn't even probably cover. So we'll open up any questions online. Feel free to type in the question panel or chat window. So we'll give you a minute if you have anything to ask. If not,
You have any questions here?
Wayne, I did one just on the Flex 5000. Isn't the number of modules you can like 16 off the adapter now?
yeah,
Instead,
to go back.
Flex IO was
Right,
8,
yes.
But now
Yeah.
Flex 5000 you can use 16 modules,
Right.
and then you have safety modules.
Yeah. 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 Hot swap.
Yeah, I mean you could pull up all you can hot swap the modules, but of course the base.
Right, well, we have it where we pull modules and it's toast up.
Yeah, good catch on that. So, yep. So there's a lot of enhancements to that line, which is, again, I think Flex IO has been a mainstay for a remote IO product for a long time. So I think we had been getting those questions a lot too, like kind of like, is that going away? And no, they're enhancing it, right? So that's all part of that high performance, all part of that connected enterprise messaging, right? Is that higher performance, the gigabit Ethernet, capability, which we have a gigabit controller now, Ethernet controller. We have another gigabit Ethernet line, which is a remote I/O line, which is the 5069 I/O. I have appointments that's on the back wall back there. So we have a couple with 2 gigabit Ethernet remote I/O platforms now, as well as 2 gigabit embedded controller lines, compact logics and control logics. So really, up in the game on that high, on that high speed, high performance capability. So that's coming out in January. So there'll be a lot of buzz around that. So look for that, more information.
Yeah, the 3D model for emulate 3D.
What creates it?
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
primarily
I'll go back a
it's
slide there.
through SolidWorks.
Saltworks, yep. So I imagine there's some work involved in setting that up, but
And you can,
There's a lot of work involved.
well, some of the stuff is already done. Like for instance, like it imports the company-specific CAD drawing, so it can take it and put it into, especially if you have it in SolidWorks. So, like for instance, if you had a conveyor or if you had a case packer or something like that, those would be put in through SolidWorks and put together. So yes, it does have some.
It starts from 2D drawings or 3D drawings?
It starts from well, if you actually put it in SolidWorks, that's actually where you're building it up in a 3D. So yeah, if you start from a 2D, that's kind of a challenge.
Well, I mean, if you have a 3D model with Integraph, would that just import right into it? Or?
That's something that you probably need to look up on 3D emulate. When I actually went to this was like the very last part of the show, and I was like, got in there, I was like, whoa, there's a lot more stuff that I can find out about. So yeah, I would go to the Emulate 3D website, and you can find out more about it.
I did not put the VR goggles on.
But it's really cool because when you put the 3D goggles on, it's not just where you're standing in one place. You can actually walk. So if you had this huge, and I actually showed this too, if you had a huge warehouse, you can walk the whole warehouse, and as you're walking around, of course, provided that you're not gonna. It should have. If all the columns are showing in the drawing, you shouldn't run into it. But
Like the next step from the old Eaton software, do a walkthrough from the
yeah,
connection screen, and you're actually just walking through it from there.
right. The really cool thing is that because it's integrated with the Rockwell automation, then you can actually, via your program, you can actually see what your reactions are if your program is correct.
So you were asking about Intergraph, where it says there you can import from a company specific CAD. That would work fine. Right.
Yeah, so you could, yeah. All right, we'll give another call out for anybody online. Feel free to either raise your hand in there, or I can unmute your line, or just type in a question. So give you just another moment to fill that out if you want. Then, but look forward. So our final slide today was just, as always, this time of year is to wish everybody happy holidays, of course, best wishes, happy new year. It's that time of year. It's hard to believe, it's December. This year has really gone by fast. So hopefully everybody has a safe holiday and takes time to just relax a little bit and spend some time with family or friends. And of course, we'll be back in January and ready to go. So 2018 is going to be a fun year, looks like. A lot of new stuff coming out. As always, we thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing everybody back in January. With that, we'll go ahead and end it. Thanks again.